Suppose I better talk about him. Hello, I'm Phil. Welcome to my channel where I like to talk about all the geeky pop culture that I consume and enjoy. And usually I like to speak about things in a very positive way. This is going to be a bit of a different video today. Oh dear. I don't usually make videos like this. I don't usually jump on controversies, mainly because I like to not jump in without knowing all the facts and make sweeping statements. And I felt a little uneasy about jumping on bandwagons of condemning people via secondhand experience, i.e. not something where I've seen a tweet by someone that quite clearly I have a view on that tweet, and it's a view on what they're saying directly, but having a view on what somebody else has said they've said always feels a little bit, or done, always feels a little bit uncomfortable for me. So I don't generally do it. But over the last few years, I've been feeling more and more uneasy about Joss Whedon. Now, for context, I am a huge Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan, an Angel fan. In fact, I would go so far as to say during my teenage years, they were my main geeky fandom. The Buffyverse was, I had every VHS and then later every DVD. I bought comics. I collected other merchandise. I was a bigger fan of Buffy and Angel than I was of Doctor Who during my teenage years. Doctor Who, I'd kind of been a sort of casual, sort of buying a few bits here and there fan as a sort of a pre-teenager. And then I kind of went off it for a few years and I came back to it later on, and now obviously it's my biggest fandom. If you know my channel at all, you'll know that. But Buffy and Angel occupied a very significant portion of my life as a fandom. You know, those teenage years when you're really growing into who you are, forming your personality. Buffy and Angel, as well as a few other shows, but they played a significant role in that. Forming who I am today, or contributing to it at least. And, you know, I loved what I viewed at the time, and I think still view as the very positive message of those shows. And then, of course, and other shows later on as well. I like, you know, massive fan of Firefly, massive fan of Dollhouse as well, which is an underrated one. Cabin in the Woods, I really like as a film. Obviously, The Avengers, less so Age of Ultron. I mean, I still think it's an okay film, but it's a much more flawed film than the first one. But generally, I have liked all of Joss Whedon's work over the years, to various degrees. But generally, I've been pretty positive about all of it. So, up until very recently, I classed myself as a Joss Whedon fan because I thought his writing was really good. He seemed like a person that epitomized the kind of outlook on life that I shared, and partly I'd built up through his shows. So all the revelations that have come out in the last few days, and the last few years, have been gradually eroding that fandom of the man. I'm still a fan of the shows. Lots of people work on those shows. They're a collaborative effort. They're not just him. And so the shows themselves, I think there's still a lot of value to. But we need to talk about the man. So, yesterday, at the time of recording this, Carpenter, who played Cordelia Chase on Buffy and Angel, released a statement saying, basically detailing her experiences with Joss while working specifically on Angel, but, you know, encompassing her wider experience of him as well, but specifically around the time when she became pregnant, and then she ended up being fired from the show the following season. What it details is an account of Joss being very bullying and abusive, and especially when he doesn't get his own way. So Charisma got pregnant. He didn't like it. At one point, according to her accounts, he sort of asked if she's planning on getting rid of it. As I said, I don't like to take immediately second-hand accounts even of someone's actions and just immediately go, well, I'm going to judge them really harshly right now based on just that. I think what we do need to do, though, and things started to come out, I think, around about 2017. First of all, from his ex-wife, who had some things to say about his cheating, about the fact that he cheated on her repeatedly for 10 years, which at the time made me think, oh, okay, well, he's clearly not as nice a guy as I thought he was. Actually, I don't think I knew about it back then. I think I only heard about this retroactively a couple of years later when the Ray Fisher stuff happened from Justice League. I then sort of people were linking back to that, and I had somehow missed it at the time. But he, apparently he cheated on her for several years, and she was saying that he basically used her and their relationship as a sort of shield to help portray himself as a feminist, but that it was all an act. And my initial thoughts on that was that it made him not a very good husband, and possibly not as nice as a person as I thought he was. But personal relationships are complicated, and my initial thought was simply that, well, I don't want to just judge him too harshly just on that. It lessens my opinion of him, but I'm not going to go like, oh, I never want anything to do with him based on the fact that he's cheated on someone, because personal relationships are complicated and we don't know what went on between that. Lots of people cheat, both women and men cheat on people all the time, and it's not nice, but we don't know what the background to it was. So at the time I was like, right, okay, this needs to be something that maybe keep an eye out on, because I think in these situations what you've got to do, if something makes an accusation or there's something that's a one-on-one he said she said thing, what you've got to do is be more aware of the looking out for the clues that might support either side. You don't necessarily have to go in and straight away take a side on it, but you do need to be more aware and more just sort of looking out for particularly for other people taking things, because there comes a point where if enough people make accusations about someone, there is clearly something going on there. Independent people that have nothing to do with each other in some cases. Sometimes they do, but there's something going on there if enough people do. And I think certainly with this Charisma Carpenter thing, and also specifically the replies to it by other cast members, I think we're definitely at the point where we go, well, there is seriously some questions to be asked about Joss Whedon here. The Charisma Carpenter thing, I should say, has been a rumour for years, and I think Charisma has talked sort of about it in a more abject way about possibly being fired because of her pregnancy, but not going into any details before, so it was very hard to possibly make judgments. It's certainly been a rumour for a while. And then we get to the Ray Fisher stuff, which happened, I think, in 2020. I think it was early last year, where Ray Fisher came out and saying that Joss was abusive on set. So that's that was my first sort of really, after his ex-wife's comments made me want to, although I found out about it roughly the same time, so about a year ago, his comments were, so he was saying that he was being abusive on set, and that was sort of backed up by comments by both Gal Gadot and Jason Momoa. And in fact, we got revelations of one instance where Joss wanted a scene where, I can't remember if it was the Flash, might have been the Flash, falls over onto Wonder Woman and basically ends up with his head buried in her breasts. Incidentally, something he did in one of the Avengers movies as well. I think it was Avengers Age of Ultron. So clearly it's a go-to for him. But Gal Gadot was not happy with that added bit and refused to do it. And so he used the stunt double and digitally put her face on Gal Gadot's face onto the stunt double, which obviously she wasn't happy about. And Jason Momoa, I think, made a comment about it, sort of backing it up as well, saying that he supports Ray Fisher. So that really raised alarms. I wasn't quite ready at that point to completely dismiss the possibility of... At that point, it was kind of still like, oh, okay, we really need to pay very much attention to sort of what's going on. But there were arguments at the time. I mean, Joss had come into what had been Zack Snyder's film, was changing a lot of stuff. And in particular with the Ray Fisher side of things, he was massively reducing his part in the film. So there was always that little possibility that Ray Fisher was possibly bitter about that. And quite clearly, I want to say objectively now, that I don't think that's the case here. But that was always a possibility. And then we get to this statement by Charisma last night, or yesterday, and it was quite a lengthy one. I'll link to it below, if it's still on Twitter. I assume it is. And you can read it for yourself. But, you know, it paints quite a picture. And again, possibly you could argue that there's a long-running dispute between the two here, and that maybe bitterness comes into play. But there comes a point where, how many people can you argue that for, really? And then when you get people that were there backing it up, like we have done on social media since then, people retweeting, people from the cast retweeting that, the weight of evidence is massively against Joss Whedon here, I think. So first of all, you had Amber Benson, who played Tara on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, saying, Buffy was a toxic environment and it starts at the top. Charisma is speaking truth and I support her 100%. There was a lot of damage done during that time and many of us are still processing it 20 plus years later. And then, not quite as damning, but still pretty significant, Sarah Michelle Gellar also released a statement on Instagram, I believe, which said, while I am proud to have my name associated with Buffy Summers, I don't want to be forever associated with the name Joss Whedon. I am more focused on raising my family and surviving a pandemic currently, so I will not be making any further statements at this time, but I stand with all the survivors of abuse and I'm proud of them for speaking out. So while that's not quite as damning, I think the implication there is clear. She is supporting Charisma for standing out there. Off the back of Sarah Michelle Gellar's Instagram post, Michelle Trachtenberg, who is played Dawn on Buffy, put a couple of statements out as well on her Instagram stories, which I believe only stay up for a certain amount of time, so that might have gone now. She said, we know what he did behind the scenes. And then in a sort of more longer post replying to Sarah on Instagram, she said, Thank you for Sarah Michelle Gellar for saying this. I am brave enough now as a 35-year-old woman to repost this because this must be known. As a teenager with his not appropriate behaviour, very not appropriate. Now, I was wondering when any of the male cast members were going to come forward and say anything about this. Up until now, I believe only Anthony Head has, who was on TV programme This Morning, on British TV this morning. He was on TV, he was on This Morning, if that makes sense, being interviewed by Philip Schofield and Holly Willoughby, and was asked about this situation. And I think he took a very measured approach to it. I think he probably took the right approach for someone who didn't see anything at the time, because as he says he didn't see anything at the time that raised alarm bells for him at the time. But he stresses that doesn't mean it didn't happen. And he's still very supportive, and he said he's quite devastated that this might have been going on and he didn't know about it. So he's definitely sort of supportive of it, but he doesn't have any sort of first-hand evidence to add to the mix, if you see what I mean. Which is, I must admit, it must be very difficult if you didn't see anything personally to work out what you could possibly say about this. If you were on a set and didn't see anything personally, what are you going to say other than, I didn't see anything, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen? Because that's kind of how bullies operate, isn't it? They target people. They target people that they view as weak and that they view that they could get away with bullying. So, not everybody's necessarily going to see it, especially if they hide it well. Everybody growing up encounters some kind of bully at school. And yeah, there's the person that's always known as the bully, the school bully that bullies everyone or is known to bully certain people. But there's also the type of bully that picks on someone and targets them but keeps it hidden from, and keeps it very private, the bullying, so that other people still think they're a nice person. I don't know, I wasn't there, but that's certainly a way that bullies operate. So, as many people have said, he had his favourites, and I'm sure that those favourites didn't see anything. But I think the weight of evidence now is stacking up against Joss Whedon quite dramatically. Now there will be people that say, oh, this is just people get heightened emotions while creating art, and isn't, that's just the cost of making art. Well, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be the cost of making art. You can create, if the cost of making art is ruining people's lives and making them miserable, the art is not worth it. Art is not that important. And like I said, I love most of what Joss Whedon has created, but if I could give it up in order for people not to have had to go through that, I would. Because you don't need that. You can create good stuff without it to start with, and if you can't, then just don't create stuff. If creating stuff gets you into such an angry mood, it can't be good for your own mental health either, so just don't do it. Do something else. So, that's kind of a summary of what's been going on, my thoughts of it. What does this mean for my viewing of my love of the TV shows and the mediums he created? I am still working that out. I don't think I'll watch anything he makes now, probably. He was making a new TV show, The Nevers, which I think he's left after the first season, even though it's been, I think, renewed for a second season. Don't quote me on that. I don't think it's aired yet. But I probably won't bother watching that now. But the stuff that I have already watched, the stuff that I've already loved and has been important to me growing up, things like Buffy, things like Angel, particularly those two, but the others as well, I don't think I'm going to completely discard them. Television is a collaborative medium. It's not just one person. And yeah, he may have been spearheading it, but lots of really talented people worked on those shows. The actors that are saying he made them suffer, they worked on these shows. They put a lot into these shows and they suffered for them. So I don't think it's right to Charisma Carpenter to never see her portrayal of Cordelia Chase again, because she was really good at it. She deserves for that to still be seen. So I will probably still watch Buffy again at some point. I don't know how it's going to make me feel while I'm watching it until I do. I was planning on doing a lot of content on Buffy. I was going to expand out, as I have, to Star Trek and to the MCU on this channel, and so it's not just a Doctor Who channel. I wanted to expand out into more things, and Buffy was going to be my next one that I expanded quite heavily into. I had plans to do a rewatch of the whole series and maybe review it in some way. I had plans to cover the comic book continuation and the comic book reboot that's recently happened. All of that, I don't think I will be doing anytime soon. I'm not going to say never, but it doesn't feel right to do it right now. And when I do, it'll probably be with a very different take than I would have done it had I done it a year ago when I first thought of it. It's a shame because up until a few years ago, I probably would have classed Joss Whedon as one of my sort of idols. I often saw him touted as the sort of geek king. Who does deserve that title now? Will Wheaton. Will Wheaton deserves that title, I hope. Let's fingers crossed nothing comes out about Will Wheaton. Please, Will Wheaton, don't disappoint us. You are the new geek king. This is kind of the first time that this has happened on such a scale to me, because there have been people that I've been massively disappointed with in the past through their actions. I've been massively disappointed with J.K. Rowling a lot recently, but Harry Potter was never massively important in my life. So the disappointment, while there, is just kind of like, oh yeah, that person that created that thing, disappointed in them. I thought they would be better than that, but it didn't quite hit me as hard as this one did, because I never read the Harry Potter books. I enjoy the films. I thought the films had a good message, and therefore Harry Potter had a good message. But, they were just films I watched and enjoyed. I never bought them. I never bought any merchandise, really. The only merchandise that I bought... My wife's bought some merchandise from Harry Potter in the past, but The only merchandise I bought is when I went to see The Cursed Child. I bought a couple of things from the theatre gift shop. That was about it. You know, it's not a massive fandom for me. It's just some films I like. This one feels much more personal. Let me know what you think about it. You know, whether or not you agree, disagree, whatever. Let me know in the comments below. Just keep it civil, if you will. Not having made a video like this before, I have no idea what the comments are going to be like, or even if anybody's going to watch it. We will see. Yeah, let me know below what you think. Thanks for watching. I'll be back with more Doctor Who, Star Trek, MCU. I'm reviewing WandaVision at the moment. But probably not any Buffy content for a while, at least. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.